Whether you have a big vacation coming up or you just want to end the year strong, in this episode, I'm going to show you 5 ways you can ramp up your revenue right now without building anything new. So let's get real. Now, welcome back to the Business Real Talk, where we are rounding out the year, and it's typically the time where people start to panic or they try to make this extra push to ramp up revenue so they can start the year strong or end the year strong. But listen, spending the next 2 weeks trying to build out some sort of Black Friday deal or trying to create some fancy funnel in hopes of hitting your best months yet is a rookie move. So, in this episode, I'm going to show you how you can ramp up your revenue without actually needing to build anything new. So, you can see the cash rolling in, but still take it easy and enjoy the upcoming holiday season. So, let's jump into it. We're going to start with number one, which is selling to past clients. Now, most people completely overlook this, but what you don't realize is that your past clients know and love you. And the reality is, they're your best buyers. Yet, so often as businesses, we completely skip over or erase them from our minds and think we just need to find new leads in order to grow. Now, the reality is, retention and reselling is the best way to grow your business quickly using what I call a pure profit strategy. Now, right now, you have a list of clients that you've worked with in the past that right now in your back pocket, you hold the opportunity to make pure profit in the shortest amount of time. And it's by looking at the clients that you've already worked with who need no convincing of your magic. What I want you to think to yourself is, what can you support them with now that they're on the other side of working with you? Can they benefit from a new program you've created, whether you've worked with them 6 months ago or 6 years ago? Do you maybe have a Voxer only support option that can support them in moving that needle? Do you have some upgrades in your previous program that maybe they could benefit from re enrolling inside of that program? And last but not least is looking at the opportunity of how you can ask for introductions, referrals, affiliates, and incentivize that action from your past clients. Now, what I want you to think about is when we talk about pure profit is a huge part of the Easy Yes method is recognizing the fact that when we don't actually need to go out and look for new leads, we're creating pure profit because every single person who's been through your pipeline and has worked with you in some way, shape, or form has now understood and realizes exactly what you do, which means we have the opportunity of either leveraging that as another tack on like retention opportunity, or we have the opportunity of leveraging them for referrals because again, they're going to be the fastest path to more cash in your business. So every business really needs to look at the fact that in the short run, I want you to think of how can I leverage the clients I've already worked with, whether that's having them sign on to work with me again or asking them for referrals, asking them to be an affiliate, creating introductions for you, all things that are going to create pure profit in the shortest amount of time. Now, as a long-term caveat, I really do want you to be thinking about if this is the first time you've ever thought, gosh, yeah, my past clients are my biggest opportunities and how can I create some new flood of people coming in? Then I want you to recognize that you should be building in a retention process within your business model as you move forward long term, because your two best clients are always going to be referrals and retaining clients. This is why our first and one of our most powerful ways to ramp up revenue really is looking at the opportunity that's right in front of you of past clients and seeing if there's a way for you to retain them or create a new working opportunity to support them, or asking for opportunities for how they can create referrals within your business. These are going to be the fastest ways for you to be able to ramp up revenue, which leads us to our second biggest way to ramp up revenue without building anything new, which is creating an experience. Now, you've heard me talk about this a lot, but inside of the Easy Yes method, we focus on our two highest intent leads. That's our high intent and our mid intent. Now, mid intent leads are really on the cusp. They just need a little bit of a nudge that's going to get them over that fear or hesitation to take that next step with you. Remember, they're the Sherlock Holmes. They're the people who really make really solid decisions, but it requires a little more time and effort in order to get them there. Now, what you want to recognize is that's a huge chunk of your audience, meaning right now, inside your pipeline, on your list, inside your audience, there's a good chunk. I'm going to say like 30% is the typical number of people who are mid intent leads who are ready to take that next step, which means rather than going out and trying to find brand new people to market to, your best opportunity is to really focus on who's right now in your pipeline. So how we support mid intent leads to take that next step is looking for how we can create that nudge that moves them across that finish line, right? And the best and fastest way we found that supports these people who specifically make decisions a little bit differently, because remember, we talked about mid intent really has these fear components surrounding their decision, is that we create an experiential component. Okay. That's going to be the fastest way to get them to move. And I'm not talking about planning out some huge workshop or starting from scratch. I want you to think about what you can use right now that you already have inside of your business. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of what this looks like. It could be that you're using an exercise that you already leverage inside of your programs to take your clients through that you're now going to do as a marketing tool. It could be a past experience that you already put together. This could be a working workshop that you already did. It could be something else you've tried before that you knew really worked well. And next is just having a group coaching session. A lot of people overlook the fact that if you're in the coaching or mentoring space specifically, you can create a group coaching session where people can come in, they can have questions answered, and you're directing them to the next step in your process. Because again, now they can experience what it's like working with you in a group environment, which doesn't tap into your time, but does allow you to showcase what it is you do really well. Another great option is to let them join a session inside of your program. Let's say you run a group program or a mastermind. You can invite people in and say, hey, we'd love to have you join in. And they can either be silent listeners and hear what you're doing with your clients as well, or they can actually partake in the process, allowing them to experience it firsthand. Now, again, if you're in the service-based business, it doesn't matter, same thing can go. You can invite them in to do a live Q&A session, anything like that that's going to allow them to have those fears removed and allow them to experience your genius firsthand. That experience is going to relieve all the fear and hesitation that really keeps your mid-intent leads on the sidelines. And it's going to allow them to be able to be fully bought in without needing any more fancy marketing, which makes this one of the best and most viable options of moving and ramping up revenue by leveraging those leads that are already in your pipeline who just need a slight little nudge to the next step. So our number 3 best way to ramp up revenue without building anything new is an intensive. Think of this as an offshoot to what you currently offer. Now, in our world, our clients know that offers are really freaking easy. I know a lot of times offers feel difficult because you have to focus on all the fancy things you have to do and how to make them sexy and irresistible. But for us, we focus on creating offers that are just an application of methodology. So all of my clients have their methodology and all of their offers are simply just applications of that, which means the opportunities become endless because you have a fully fledged methodology that you've created and you've been selling all along. And now you're just creating offshoots of what that looks like. But whether or not you have been doing that before, obviously, because I teach method-based selling and that's not something that's typically seen out there. If not, it doesn't make a difference. No matter what or where you're at in your business, intensives are a great cash infusion. Now, what I want you to think about when it comes to an intensive is it's going to alleviate 2 of the biggest action blockers in your pipeline right now, which is long-term commitment, which creates that lack of confidence people have of like, well, this sounds great, but do I really want to sign on to work with her for 6 months inside of her program? Or do I really want to work with her one-on-one for 3 months when I'm not really sure? It creates this confidence that removes that need for long-term commitment, but it also removes that fear of, will this work, right? Creating safety for them. So right now, your audience, those are the 2 emotional struggles that they go through is confidence and safety. So you're removing that lack of confidence because, oh my gosh, it's a long-term commitment, but also you're creating safety of, will this work? Because you're allowing them to essentially get a taste of what you do. So intensives allow you to alleviate those feelings by giving people this short-term engagement where they can experience the change with you firsthand. So I want you to think of what's one change that you can create in a short period of time. I'm talking 30 days or less. It could be one step in your process. It could be one piece of the puzzle, anything like that. I'll give you an example using my business. We run 2 different types of intensives. One is a 30-day intensive where I give my clients 4 one-to-one calls and 30 days of Voxer where I can help my clients go through an entire pillar of our method. So typically a lot of people will come into me and whether they've been burned in the past or whatever, what it allows us to do is build out their methodology and messaging. So in 30 days, they're going to walk away with a fully fledged method because I can do that within an intensive. Now, the coolest thing about this is 100% of my intensives have resulted in longer term engagements. Meaning back in the day when I was selling just one-on-ones and I was working for 3 months with clients, that was a little scary for people, especially if they were just getting to know me or they had any fears or any blocks on why they wanted to take that next step with me. So what it will allow them to do is I would work with them for 30 days on one piece of the puzzle. And I would make that very clear because that's a really important part of it, is really setting the expectation that it's a short-term engagement, which means we're not going to do everything that I typically talk about. So I would would talk about like, we're going to fix this one piece. So for them, it would typically be the messaging and methodology. And what would happen is after working with me for 30 days, they were like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And they would continue to work with me in my full programs. So it really created this great opportunity for me to give them a way to experience what it's like working with me, but also build into the longer term. So especially when I was new in my business, this was a really great way for me to do this. Another great way that I do this even right now. So in case you are listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to be able to see if working with us is the right option, I offer something called a Diagnose and Grow Intensive. This is brand new. I haven't been offering it for very long. I think it's actually been only a couple of weeks. And what it is it's one 75-minute one-to-one session with me, which by the way, guys, I rarely ever offer one-to-one sessions because I'm usually booked out in my one-on-ones for years in advance, but it's one 75-minute one-to-one session with me and 30 days of Voxer support. And the goal in this is that in that one 75-minute session, we can diagnose where your biggest growth opportunities are and develop an entire strategy and plan for you to go and take action on. And then for 30 days, you're going to get Voxer support of me in your back pocket, answering questions, moving that along, and really helping you through that implementation plan. This allows me to help people create that opportunity and have that fully fledged support, but in a shorter bite-sized version. Now, I want you to think, even if you're not working with clients one-to-one, and trust me, I am very rarely opening one-to-one options to work with me. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, Oz, I want to learn a little bit more about your intensives, send me a message over on Facebook or Instagram at Next Level Up CEO. Send me a message and just say intensive and I'll share a little bit more about it. But let's say that you don't want to add more one-to-ones to your list right now. Maybe you just don't have the time capacity or it's just uncomfortable for you. You can create an intensive of a program. So a great example of this is if I right now wanted to create an intensive that's just focused on messaging, meaning I don't take them through the sales process, I don't take them through marketing or anything like that, but I just want people to be able to walk away with a fully fledged message that they feel really comfortable with, that really shares what they do clearly. I can create a group intensive where for 30 days I work together with people creating this message that they can walk away with. So I'm still able to create a leveraged approach and it doesn't take away from anything I'm doing. It just creates this opportunity for people to come into my world. And like I said, I see every single time I create any type of intensive, it always relates people back to working with me long term. It's just kind of alleviating the fear and the lack of confidence people have. So that is number 3 in our huge ways to be able to ramp up your revenue, which leads us to number 4. So here's what I call it. I call it the soapbox hot list. Now, we all have hot button topics that when we speak to them, it gets people thinking and moving. It's like this disruption that makes people really stop in their tracks and pay attention. Now, if you've been hanging out with me long enough, you know that I'm really big on data and tracking, and there's so many reasons for this. But in this case, it's because this is one way it can pay off for you. Because if you've been tracking your biggest opportunity points and you know that, gosh, when I post this, I get an influx of leads coming in or I have people DMing me, then you've already been tracking and understand your what I call soapbox hot list, right? These are topics that get people listening and get people engaging and moving, that you can use those tried and true topics to get people moving when you want to ramp things up. So you should have a list of these, and we track every single piece of messaging that comes through our business model. So every single thing that we do is being tracked. So I can go in and look at it and say, okay, this piece of content booked me 10 calls last time I posted it. Or, hey, last time I ran this episode, I was able to get 40K in new client business. Whatever it is, I have the opportunity so that we can ramp things up, but also I could step away and have this kind of working for me. And on top of that, it creates a really good opportunity of what I'm testing in warm audiences and then moving out to cold audiences. So we have a really big testing process that we go through. But what I want you to realize is whether or not you have been tracking your soapbox hot list up until now, if you haven't, make sure you make this a point to do this. Make sure that you're spending time every single week looking at your numbers, tracking what's working and what's not working so you can make those decisions. But even if you don't, let's say you've never been tracking messaging or your content and you're like, gosh, Naz, I'm starting from square one. No worries. You already know that there are some concepts that are disruptive that you stand for. Okay. It might be that you have already shared them, but you've shared them in a small capacity, or they're ones that you've never really talked about and you've kind of kept them hidden. This is the time to share those loudly and proudly with a clear intent and direction on how that disruption is going to lead to the next step. Meaning that when you share a disruptive concept, I want you to think about, How can I then bridge this to how it's going to position you as the solution? This is what gets people standing at attention, but also gets them to move to the next step. So from there, again, like I said, you're going to think of your soapbox hot list, but you're also going to think about how does that position and bridge you to you as the solution. Okay. So I'll give you a great example of what we do. I talk all the time about how creating content alone is not a marketing strategy. That is a really disruptive concept that I share. And when I share, it gets people to stand at attention. So if I share that topic, I have to know that, hey, I'm going to create a positioning opportunity at the end of that says, hey, I have this intensive, or hey, I have this marketing strategy within my EZS method that allows you to solve for that. So I'm not just creating disruption for the sake of creating disruption. I want to be very clear on that, but we're creating disruption with a clear goal in mind and a bridge that's going to clearly position that next step with that disruption. Okay. So that was number 4 on our 4th biggest way to ramp up revenue. Now, the 5th biggest one is not going to sound sexy or cute, but I'm going to need you to listen really freaking clearly on this. Because if you're in this position right now where you're caught with your pants down and you're like, gosh, I need to figure out a way to ramp up revenue, I'm tired. I don't want you to be in this rut. I don't want you to be in a position of constantly looking for ways to figure out how to ramp up your revenue. I want you to plan for long-term cash growth. This is the sexiest option, even if you don't think it's sexy right now. It's the sexiest option for you to recognize that you need a long-term growth plan that's going to inject cash into your business every single month. Meaning you're not dependent on things like launches. You're not dependent on trying to figure out what you're going to do next because, gosh, if this doesn't work, I don't know what I'm going to do next. Everything we talked about so far have been great ways to inject cash and ramp up growth. But I want you to realize that the goal, if you're in my world, is to have long-term systems. So you become less and less reliant on needing ramp ups or cash injections within your business because predictability is sexy and boring businesses scale. Okay. Now, what I want you to realize is one of the biggest things you can do to ramp up revenue is to create sustainable systems that will now consistently carry you and maintain growth without needing more hoops. Okay. This is the time and the season of building your growth systems for scale. So I'm going to talk to you about the 4 growth systems of scale that I want you to start planning out for and start looking at and start talking to me about, because this is where we shine, which is number 1, your methodology system. Okay. I'm going to beat this like a dead horse, but I want you to recognize that having your methodology and messaging system is how you become known and paid as the innovator in your industry. So you can make competition irrelevant and stop chasing demand and start creating it. This is where everything is birthed from. It's from innovation. It's recognizing that innovation is the driving force to long-term sustainable growth, but also of getting you out of the need to always be on. Okay. So that's the first system. Do not pass go. Do not do anything else until that piece is first and foremost created. The second piece is your marketing system. So your marketing system is meant to broadcast your message strategically. So you're increasing your reach without increasing your workload. So we use what we call our inbound demand marketing system. And it's about knowing exactly how to create a compelling message that targets the right people, leverages natural psychology of what triggers their movement quickly and effectively, only using 4 pieces of weekly client content acquisition system. Okay. This means that we get people every single week in our business, and our clients do the same. Every single week, they have people raising their hands in their inbox, asking about how they can work with them, even if you've never said hello to them in the first place. This is done methodically because we understand that we need to be able to support people in being able to make weekly decisions within your world. It's also really important to recognize that we have to optimize our systems. So if you've previously used launches or ads as your lead marketing system, and right now you're seeing a dip in the quality or even the quantity of leads that you have, it's time to take into account the shifts of the market and adjust. This is why when we look at our EZS method, we focus on an evergreen and leverage strategy that's not market dependent. So what this means is they're rooted in timelessness of human psychology and simple inbound principles. So my clients aren't reinventing the wheel every other week. Okay. So whether the algorithm tanks or you just get so busy that you can no longer create 5 TikToks 5 times a day, then our inbound demand marketing system doesn't require you to chase the need for ever-changing hacks of what we call tactical growth. Tactical growth will always be a short-term solution, and having strategic systems and strategies that move your business along are what's going to allow you to have more leverage within your business, okay? Which leads us to the 3rd system of scale, which is our sales conversion system. So people want to buy without being sold to. Now, that might sound a little bit backwards, but I want you to realize what that means. People actually want to make decisions in the fastest and most least invasive way possible. Gone are the days of people needing to have 20 touch points or needing to go through three of your low ticket offers in order to buy your high ticket offer. People want to make self led decisions that feel really good to them. So, having an on demand and evergreen system that supports this with the least amount of friction of time is what our bingeable sales system does and where it really shines, right? Is because people can come in and enter my world and literally binge through my bingeable sales system, come out the other side within less than an hour and say, this is exactly what I need and start working with me. And I'll give you a great example. I had 3 clients in the last, I want to say week and a half who had never known me. One was from ads, one was that she saw my content in another group. And I think the third one was actually from ads as well. She came into my world. These women, all 3 came in through my world, went through my bingeable system, had never heard my name before, didn't know who the heck I was, and literally within an hour booked a call. And within 24 to 48 hours, got on that call with me and signed on to my mastermind program. That means that there was not 20 touch points. They didn't need to consume tons of content. They were ready to buy. Those are my high intent leads, right? And if I don't have a process that supports people in doing that, then I'm essentially creating barriers where there doesn't need to be any. But to top it all off, you have to think about what I talk about, the 48-hour easiest conversion period. In the first 48 hours, when you meet people, is the highest and hottest point of conversions. Most people do not know how to, nor do they have a process that currently works to support people in that process. Meaning that if someone enters your world right now, they probably don't have a way to make a fast decision. So it means that maybe they're waiting to be joining your group, or maybe they have to get onto your email list. And on email number 3, you give them this opportunity. Or maybe you have live launches that you're doing, or maybe even you have a webinar, but that webinar is not really getting them to move through the process because it's giving them too much fluff, right? Our bingeable sales system literally is tailored to support people to be able to quickly understand who you are, what you do, how you do it, and how you are the innovator. So within an hour's time or less, they're able to binge through and say, heck yes, this is exactly what I need, and make huge buying decisions without any friction. Okay. So super important for you guys to realize that having that conversion system that's going to be able to drive results and do so long-term with the least amount of input needed from you is going to be the fastest way to really scale your business and have a ramp up that doesn't require you to do all this extra thing. So you can literally step away from your business and have people be able to come in and make decisions, which leads us to number 4, which is the delivery system. Okay. I spent 4 months this year rebuilding our entire delivery systems. And you might be asking yourself, Naz, why the heck would you do that if they weren't broken? Like, what was wrong? The reality was nothing in my systems were broken. But what I realized is that scaling requires you to think of gaps before they become gaps. This is what a lot of people struggle, especially if they're moving to 7, 8, 9 figures. They don't get out of that mentality of being someone who's just reactive to things as they're happening. When you become a scaling business, you have to be able to think of gaps. You have to think about breaking points before they even happen. So I knew that I wanted to double the number of clients I served. And I knew that there were optimization points within our process that I could make even better and smoother so that my time wouldn't need to increase in order to serve more clients at the same level. So my husband and I were talking about my income goals and my client goals for next year. And when I shared it with him, he's like, okay, well, that sounds great, but do you really want to be busier? And it was really awesome to be able to say, well, I'm not going to be busier because I rebuilt my entire delivery systems, and everyone that would be coming in would just be going through the same systems, and I'd be able to support them without needing more of my time. And that is the ultimate goal, right? So many times I see people when they're scaling their businesses, so many of my clients come to me at 7 figures and they're scaling to 8 figures, and they can't leverage what they have right now because it's not built to scale. They're in reactive mode and they're handling things as it comes up, but that's just not a way that we can really grow. So I want you to recognize that whether right now for me, if I choose to double, triple, or 10x my growth this year, my number one priority, AKA my clients, will still maintain the same level of service, if not higher. And that to me is a huge foundational concept that so many business owners don't look at. Let's be real. Right now, if you went to go and hire a social media manager or an ad strategist or whatever, they're probably not going to ask you, hey, is your program able to support people if we signed on 10 new clients this month? They're not going to ask you that because that's not their job. But as a strategist, this is a huge piece that I talk to my clients. And you can go back and listen to the episode that we did with Jane, where I literally pulled apart her program and I was like, no, you can't do this. Your program needs to be set up in a way that's actually going to drive the same, if not better results for your clients, because that is your best and most valued asset is the clients that you have that you're serving, which again is why number one for us is always that go back to past clients, because you need to be able to create massive growth for your clients in order for your business to be sustainable long term. So those are the 4 growth systems inside of that long-term growth strategy that you really need to start thinking about. And I hope that right now, everything we've talked about short-term and long-term strategies. And it's why I care so much about our EZS method and why we've really solved for a gap in the marketplace, was recognizing the EZS method takes into account short-term and long-term growth strategies. So we understand that we need to build long-term those 4 systems that we need within our business, but we also understand the need for ramping up revenue quickly and effectively so that you can really get that ROI as quickly as possible. So I always tell my clients, ROI is my number one concern for clients, because I know how motivating and how powerful that is to taking the next steps within your business. This is why the EZS method is the only method of its kind that truly creates sustainable and powerful growth that focuses on innovation. That's why the first pillar inside the EZS method is what we call the innovative advantage, creating that innovation and bringing that to light through our innovative gap methodology so that you understand where the gaps in the marketplace are, how you fill for those gaps, and how you now can create demand and become the known and wanted solution that can charge 5 to 10 times more, and people will happily pay you because you're no longer competing against anyone else in the marketplace. You become a market of one, which leads us to step number 2, which is having the growth systems that allow you to acquire clients consistently using our evergreen system. So again, we talked about how we have a 2-pronged approach, and it starts with our bingeable sales system and how we leverage that to get people to be able to say yes, and by binging their way through your system and getting them to sell themselves, which leads us to our third and final piece, which is the pure profit strategy of actually driving results for your clients. You can see that we really do value that as our number one biggest priority within our business, because having a process where you can support your clients at getting amazing world-class results at scale should always be the number one priority within your business. So if you've been listening and you're like, gosh, Naz, this is amazing information, I wish I just had a system that I knew year after year can continue to scale, I want to invite you to the next steps. It's time for us to get on a call. So always option number 1 is to book your growth optimization call with me. And you can do that over at ezsleads.com/call. But if you want to learn a little bit more about how our EZS method works and actually go through our bingeable sales system firsthand, I want to invite you to go check out our mini series that breaks down exactly how we get our leads to sell themselves using our bingeable sales system. You can check that out at easyesleads.com. And as always, we love and appreciate when you subscribe, rate, and share this episode with others so that we can make innovation a movement that no one can stop. Until next time, here's to keeping it real.